She shouted from across the street. "You can't park there! This is HOA property!" Her voice was so sharp that even the neighbors peeking from their windows froze for a moment. I had just come back from a 3-month solo trip, dust still on my boots, luggage still in my hand, when she stormed toward me like I had trespassed on her kingdom. I kept my calm, though my pulse quickened. She waved a paper in my face, a wrinkled notice with HOA letters on top. "This house isn't yours anymore. We warned you. You're violating community rules." I looked at the paper once, then at her. No signatures, no stamp, just her handwriting. She didn't even hide it well. Still, she smirked, as if her words could kick me off my own driveway. "Pack your stuff. Cops are on their way," she said, pulling out her phone and dialing right in front of me, like she wanted the whole street to watch the show. My jaw tightened. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. Instead, I leaned against my truck and said quietly, "Call them. I'll be waiting." Inside, my mind raced. She thought I was weak, just some guy coming back tired from a trip. She had no clue what paperwork was locked safely in my bag, or the plan already forming in my head. And when the police pulled up minutes later, her fake authority was about to crash hard against the truth I carried.
The squad car rolled up with flashing lights, and Karen's face lit up like she had already won. She pointed at me dramatically. "Officer, arrest him! He broke into this house! He doesn't live here!" The officer glanced at me, then at her, and raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, you called saying this was trespassing?" She nodded so hard it looked rehearsed. I stayed calm, even when 2 more neighbors wandered out to watch. My suitcase was still on the ground, my keys still in the lock. Karen was so sure of herself, she even handed the officer that fake notice. He read it, frowned, and muttered, "This isn't even an official document." But before he could finish, Karen jumped in. "It doesn't matter. The HOA board decided he has to leave. He's violating everything." I slowly reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. Deed papers, title documents, even last year's tax receipts. My voice was low but steady. "Officer, I own this property. I've owned it for 5 years. There is no HOA here." His eyes widened a little as he flipped through the papers. Karen's smile faded. Her hands clenched around her phone as she hissed, No, that can't be right. We've been managing the street for years." The officer gave her a sharp look. "Ma'am, pretending to have legal authority is a serious issue. You need to stop." But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You don't understand," she snapped. "He's dangerous. He shouldn't be here." That was her mistake, because the next thing I said would flip the entire situation, and her only escape was about to vanish right in front of everyone.
I stepped forward just enough for everyone to hear me, lowering my voice so it carried more weight. "Dangerous? You really want to go there, Karen?" She froze, her lips parting, but no words came out. I continued, "You don't even know who I am, do you?" The officer glanced back at me, waiting. I pulled a slim leather wallet from my jacket and flipped it open. Inside was my military ID, still valid, still carrying weight. "I spent 10 years serving this country overseas," I said calmly, "and I don't scare easy, especially not from someone printing fake notices in their living room." The crowd stirred. A few neighbors whispered. One even stifled a laugh. Karen's face turned red, but before she could lash out, the officer cut in. "Ma'am, unless you can prove an actual HOA exists here, you're interfering with this man's rights on his own property." His tone was sharper now. Karen stammered, I manage parking. Everyone knows the rules." She pointed toward the narrow strip beside my driveway. "That's my spot. I have the only claim there. He can't touch it." Her desperation spilled out, and that's when the idea clicked in my head. Her precious only spot was the one card she thought made her powerful. I let a slow smile creep across my face. "Your only spot, huh? Well, maybe it's time we settle that once and for all." And in that moment, a plan began forming that would not only expose her lie, but take away the one thing she clung to like a crown.
The next morning, I was up before sunrise. Karen's precious only spot sat empty like a throne waiting for its queen. I had spent the whole night gathering what I needed, measurements, permits, and a signed letter from the city office that I pulled from my files. She thought she owned that curb, but she didn't know I'd already applied for a legal right-of-way months ago, before my trip. I backed my truck slowly into the spot, the sound of gravel crunching echoing down the street. Then I unloaded a stack of bright orange cones and a fresh, city-approved, reserved access, owner-use-only sign. I drilled it right into the ground, every clang of the hammer loud enough to wake the whole block. By the time I was done, neighbors were gathering again, whispering with wide eyes. Karen came storming out in a robe, hair wild, voice screeching. "What do you think you're doing? That's my space. You can't just steal it." I didn't even look up. I tightened the last bolt, dusted my hands off, and pulled the permit from my folder. I held it up for everyone to see. Actually, I can. This land belongs to my property line, legally registered, city approved. The officer from yesterday happened to be patrolling by. He slowed down when he saw the scene, rolled down his window and asked, "Everything good here?" I handed him the permit. He scanned it, then smirked. "Looks solid. It's his right, ma'am." Karen's face collapsed like glass shattering. She tried to argue, but her voice cracked. The neighbors chuckled quietly, shaking their heads. For the first time, she looked small. But I knew she wasn't done, not yet. The way her eyes burned into me said she was planning something bigger, something nastier. And that only made me more ready for the next move. That evening, just when I thought she'd gone quiet, Karen made her move. I heard tires screech outside and stepped onto the porch. A tow truck was backing toward my driveway, its flashing lights reflecting off my windows. Karen stood proudly beside it, arms crossed, barking orders at the driver. "Yes, hook it up. This vehicle is parked illegally. I'm the HOA president." The driver hesitated, looking at me, then at her. "Ma'am, are you sure? This looks like private property." She snapped, "Do it. I'll handle the paperwork." Her voice cracked, but she tried to sound authoritative. The neighbors were already gathering again, phones out, recording. I walked down calmly, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Funny thing," I said, holding it up. "I installed cameras last year. They've been running this whole time." I tapped the screen and showed the driver the footage. Karen standing on my property yesterday, yelling, threatening, shoving that fake notice into the officer's hands. The driver throws. I don't get paid enough for this. I'm not touching his truck." He jumped back into his cab, pulled the lever, and the tow arm rattled back into place. Karen lunged toward him, screaming, "No, you work for me. You have to listen." But the driver rolled up his window and sped away, leaving her in a cloud of dust. The neighbors laughed openly now, some clapping, others shaking their heads. I stepped closer, my voice low so only she could hear. "Keep digging, Karen. Every stunt you pull, I'll have proof." Her face twitched, caught between rage and fear. And then, for the first time, I saw it. She wasn't just being petty. She was desperate. Because behind that fake HOA mask, she was hiding something bigger, something she couldn't afford to let me uncover.
The next day, I noticed something odd. Karen wasn't out front like usual, barking at kids riding bikes or measuring lawns with her tape. Her car was gone, and her house looked shut tight. But when I checked my cameras later that night, the truth hit me. She had been sneaking around. The footage showed her creeping onto my property at 2 a.m., shining a flashlight near the corner of my fence. She wasn't just being nosy, she was looking for something. Curious, I walked the line the next morning. That's when I spotted it. A small metal stake, hammered deep into the ground, freshly painted orange. At first, I thought it was nothing, but then I noticed more.
dozens of them, stretching behind my yard into the empty lot. My stomach tightened. She wasn't fighting for a parking spot, she was marking boundaries. By afternoon, I had my answer. A letter arrived in my mailbox, not from the city, but from a private development company. It claimed there was a planned HOA expansion, and my land was being considered for community use. My name wasn't on the consent list, yet Karen's was, written in bold as acting chair. I laughed under my breath. So that was her game. She wasn't power-hungry for nothing. She was trying to seize my property for a deal. But she didn't know one thing. Her signature on that fake HOA letter was now tied to this bigger fraud. And I had it all recorded. That evening, I stood on my porch as she finally pulled in, pretending nothing was wrong. I called out calmly, "Karen, funny thing. I found your stakes." Her head snapped toward me, color draining from her face. She knew exactly what I meant.
I spent the next 2 days quietly building my case. Every clip from my cameras, every fake notice she taped to my door, every late-night visit she made with her flashlight, I saved it all on a drive. Then I went one step further. I pulled the county records, proving the land she was expanding into wasn't up for development at all. Her entire HOA scheme was a scam she had signed her own name to. By the weekend, the neighborhood had gathered for what Karen called a mandatory HOA meeting. She stood at the front of her driveway with a folding table, handing out copies of her fake bylaws. People looked uneasy, whispering, but no one dared challenge her. That's when I stepped forward, holding my folder. "Mind if I speak?" I asked, loud enough for the whole block to hear. She smirked. "No one here wants to hear from you. You're not even part of this community." I smiled faintly. "Actually, I own the land you're standing on." I dropped my documents on her table with a sharp thud. The crowd leaned in as I pulled out photos and video stills. Karen sneaking with her flashlight, Karen planting stakes, Karen screaming about being HOA president to a tow truck driver. Gasps rippled through the neighbors. One man shook his head. "You forged all this, Karen?" Another woman muttered, "I knew something was off." Karen's voice cracked. "He's lying. This is all edited." I held up the final card, her signed agreement with the fake development company. Then explain why your name is on this, promising land you don't own. Her face drained white. The crowd erupted. Phones were out, people recording, voices rising. And right at that moment, the same officer from before pulled up in his cruiser, stepping out slowly. "Looks like I showed up just in time," he said, eyes locked on her. The officer stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel, while everyone's cameras stayed locked on Karen. She tried to smile, her voice trembling. "Oh, officer, thank God you're here. This man is harassing me and spreading lies." He didn't even flinch. Instead, he picked up the fake notice from her table, holding it with 2 fingers like it was something rotten. "Ma'am, I already warned you once. This is not a legal document. And now I've got multiple complaints, video evidence, and your signature on fraudulent contracts." He looked at her sharply. "That's impersonation, trespassing, and attempted property fraud." The crowd gasped. Karen's bravado cracked completely. No, you don't understand. It's a misunderstanding. I was just trying to—" "Cuff her," the officer said flatly to his partner, who had just stepped out of the cruiser. The click of the handcuffs was followed by cheers from the neighbors, some even clapping. Phones were raised higher, capturing the exact moment Karen's self-proclaimed presidency ended with her wrists bound. As she was being led to the car, she twisted her head toward me, shouting, "This isn't over! You'll regret this!" I just shook my head, calm and steady. "Karen, I fought for this country so people like you couldn't steal what others built. I don't regret anything." The officer nodded at me before closing the cruiser door. "Good thing you kept records. Most people don't." The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering, relieved. For the first time in months,
the street felt lighter. Karen's reign of fake authority had crumbled in front of everyone, and she wasn't coming back as the queen of anything.
When the street finally quieted down, I sat on my porch steps, the evening sun casting long shadows across my yard. My truck was safe in the driveway, the reserved access sign still standing tall, and for the first time since coming home, I could actually breathe easy. A couple of neighbors walked by, pausing to nod and say, "Glad you stood up to her. We were all tired of living under her threats." I gave a small smile, but deep down, I felt more than just relief. I thought about the years I'd spent overseas, about why I came back in the first place, to have peace, to build something of my own without anyone trying to take it. And here, in my own country, someone had tried to strip that away with lies and fake authority. But justice had held. My land was mine, my rights intact, and Karen's empire had fallen apart the moment she underestimated the truth. I glanced at the American flag I'd hung before leaving for my trip, its edges fluttering in the evening breeze. For me, it wasn't just cloth. It was a reminder. I didn't fight for this country just to be told I can't park on my own driveway. And with that, I leaned back, finally at peace, knowing freedom wasn't something given, it was something you stood your ground for.